Hi, good morning children and welcome to our English class. So before we start, I want you to imagine something. Okay, let's begin. So first you look at this picture very carefully and tell me, what do you feel? If such a person comes in front of you, what would you do? Will you get scared and run away from there? Or will you go behind that person and ask him who he is? Or will you go and run to the police station and report of a very suspicious person walking on the streets at night? What would you do? Now I'm sure that you have imagined this situation and you have your answers ready. So let me take you to the next level. I'm sure that looking at this picture, some of you at least might have thought of detectives, investigations, something mysterious going on somewhere, isn't it? Yes, I know that your imaginations are really high. Now I'm sure those of you who have guessed that this might be a detective, you might have associated the words suspense and clues to it. Now don't you feel that there is a real suspense and mystery hidden in this? So let's find out. Let's start the unit Mystery and Suspense, and we'll be doing the first chapter, The Mask. Now this chapter, The Mask, is written by a real gem of a person. This person has made such a lot of contributions to the English language and has enriched the beauty of English literature. Let me introduce to you Satyajit Ray. Satyajit Ray was born in Calcutta in the year 1950, and he was not only good at making contributions to the field of English literature, but he was also a well-known screenwriter, director, a music director. He was a lyricist and he was also a graphic designer. In short, to say that he was a multi-talented person. Most of his works belong to the Bengali fiction, but it has also been translated to English. Some of his very important works include The Appu Trilogy, The Music Room, The Big City and Charulata. He's a master storyteller, and that is why two of his important characters became very important in Bengali fiction. The first character is Feluda, who is a detective, and the second character is Professor Shanku, who is actually a scientist. His stories are simple and entertaining and always have an element of suspense and mystery. So let us begin the chapter, The Mask. So before starting our lesson, we can get introduced to our characters. So there's a small list of characters. I'll tell you the names one by one. So the first character that we have is Feluda. Feluda, I already told you, he's a detective. Then there is Topsy. Topsy is Feluda's cousin. Not only that he's the cousin, but he's also the narrator of the story. Our next character is Rajan Babu, who lives a retired life in Darjeeling. Then we have Rajan Babu's tenant Tinkori Babu, who pays rent and stays with Rajan Babu. Then we have Abani Mohan Ghoshal, who is actually a person who's very much interested in antiques. Now what do you mean by antiques? Antiques means a collection of old things. Okay, and then we have Dr. Phoni Mitra. Dr. Phoni Mitra is a doctor by profession. Our very last character is Prabir. Prabir is Rajan Babu's son. Now this is the list of characters. I know that there are a lot of characters and you need to know the names of all these characters. So you can do one thing, you can pause the video, you can go through the names once again, you can learn how to pronounce them well. I know the names are a little strange, it's all because it's from the Bengali fiction. Anyways, we can continue the next part of our lesson. So you can take out your textbook and you can go through as I am reading. So first let's start with the warm-up activity. In the spidergram given below, list 6 expressions that you associate with mystery stories. So already I told you that when you hear the word mystery, some words such as clues or investigations or suspense comes into your mind. So what words come into your mind, those words you can just write over there. I hope that you have done that. Now we can start the lesson. This story takes place in Darjeeling, where Feluda and Topsy are holidaying. Feluda is a private detective, while his cousin Topsy is the narrator of the story. One evening, While sitting at the mall, Topsy accidentally overhears Rajan Babu, an amiable old man living a peaceful retired life in Darjeeling, confiding in Tinkori Babu, his tenant, about a threatening letter that he had received by post. Thinking that it may require investigation, Topsy tells Feluda about it. The story begins with Feluda and Topsy visiting Rajan Babu. So we see that as the lesson begins, the detective Feluda and his cousin Topsy are actually on a holiday and they are in Darjeeling. And one evening, as they are just sitting in a mall in Darjeeling is a place where you can sit and eat and there will be shops nearby. So it's a very small place. It's not a high-rise building. So they're sitting there and Topsy happens to hear two people talking. Is it a good habit to hear two people talking? No, it's not a good habit. But anyways, he becomes very curious about what these two people are talking. And he hears that Rajan Babu is actually being blackmailed by someone else. And this blackmail is happening through a letter. And Rajan Babu is actually telling his tenant. Do you remember who is the tenant? Yes, Tinkori Babu. Okay, so Topsy happens to hear this conversation and he thinks that since his cousin is actually a detective. Who is a detective? Detective is a person who can find out about what crime is going on. So he thinks that it is a very good opportunity for him and he thinks that this investigation will definitely lead to some kind of solution. So Topsy tells his cousin Feluda about this investigation, and as the lesson begins, we will see that Topsy and Feluda are visiting Rajan Babu's house. So we can also visit along with them. Let's go. Rajan Babu's house had a lovely old world charm. Cane furniture and strange masks adorned the living room. Very recently, Rajan Babu had developed an interest in antiques and curio and had started collecting them. As it turned out, Rajan Babu had once helped Feluda's father, so he willingly took up Feluda's offer to help him find out who had sent the threatening letter. He was just about to tell us about it when Tinkori Babu joined us. So when Topsy and Feluda reach at Rajan Babu's house, they find that his house is like a very old house. It is very cozy, it is very comfortable. And not only that, it was very beautifully decorated. Then they also find that there are a lot of old collections in his house because Rajan Babu had very recently developed a craze towards collecting old things such as antiques and curio. So he also has different sorts of masks or any other things that are very old. So that also increased the beauty of that cozy and little house. And as these people were talking, it turned out that Rajan Babu had once helped Feluda's father. So Feluda was all the more ready to help Rajan Babu out of this situation. So he decided to know what is the whole story. But as he was just about to narrate the whole incident, Tinkori Babu, who is a tenant of Rajan Babu, comes and visits them. Introducing himself as Rajan Babu's tenant, Tinkori Babu said, "I did hesitate to move into Rajan's house as I have a special weakness for cheroots. Only when he said that he did not mind the smell of cheroots did I accept the offer." Feluda turned to Rajan Babu and asked, "Do you have the letter here?" Rajan Babu took it out of his pocket. It was not handwritten. The words "Be prepared to pay for your misdeeds" had been cut out from the newspapers and pasted there. Rajan Babu said, "It was posted in Darjeeling. Unfortunately, I threw the envelope away." Feluda asked, "Do you suspect anyone? Does anyone visit you regularly?" So now who has joined the picture? Yes, Tinkori Babu has joined the picture now, and he just introduces himself. He says that I didn't want to come and stay here but because I have this habit of smoking, but since Rajan Babu doesn't mind it, that's why I accepted the offer and I stay with him. But we see that Feluda is a detective and he's a very straightforward person. He's not interested in these conversations. He doesn't even bother about Tinkori Babu and he directly goes and asks Rajan Babu, "Do you have the letter with you?" And as Rajan Babu takes out the letter and gives it to him, we see that it's not a handwritten letter. So what kind of letter was it? Yes, it was a letter in which the words were cut out from the newspaper and pasted. So Rajan Babu also recollects that that letter was posted in Darjeeling, and very sadly he had thrown away the envelope. So he doesn't remember from where or which person had actually sent him that letter. So that was the letter, and looking at that he becomes very suspicious and he asks Rajan Babu, do you suspect anyone or do you have doubts on anyone? But we also see that in the beginning of the chapter, Rajan Babu is actually introduced as a very amiable man. So amiable man means he is very friendly. So what do you think? Will he have any suspects? Let's find out. No, I can't recall ever harming anyone, and I don't get too many visitors. Dr. Phony Mitra comes occasionally, only when I am ill, and Mr. Abani Mohan Ghoshal has recently started visiting me. Just then, Mr. Ghoshal walked in. He was an expert in antiques and wanted to examine the authenticity of an antique bell that Rajan Babu had bought. After Mr. Ghoshal had left, Feluda advised Rajan Babu to stay at home for the next few days. So Rajan Babu tries to recall whether he has got any enemies or has he had a fight with anyone, but as much as he recalls, he is not able to ever find out an incident where he had a fight with anyone. So he says, I have never had enemies, I have always had good friends, and he says, I don't have any visitors also. Only when I am not feeling well, the doctor comes and visits me. Who is the doctor? Dr. Phony Mitra. So he comes and he visits me. But apart from that, I only have one frequent visitor. And who is that? Yes, that is Mr. Abani Mohan Ghoshal. So he comes and visits me. And why does he visit? Can you tell? Why does he visit Rajan Babu occasionally? He visits because Rajan Babu, already we know that he has some craze in buying old collections. So when he buys something, Mr. Abani Mohan Ghoshal comes and checks whether it is really old or whether someone is trying to fool Rajan Babu. So he comes to check the authenticity or reality of the old antique. So after going through the letter and understanding what the situation is, Feluda advises Rajan Babu to stay at home at least for a few days. As we got up to leave, Feluda moved towards the mantelpiece to take a close look at the 3 photographs there. Rajan Babu explained that the first one was his wife's photograph, the second one was of himself as a child, and the third one was of his son Prabir. When we met Tinkori Babu in a coffee shop the next day, he said, I think Ghoshal is a crook. He pretends to be interested in art and antiques, but I think he only wants to buy them cheap here and sell them to foreigners at a higher rate. So Feluda advises Rajan Babu and he decides to leave from there. But as he was leaving, he saw that there is a mantelpiece. Now what is a mantelpiece? A mantelpiece is an area above the fireplace where you can decorate using a flower vase or photographs. So when he sees that place, he sees 3 photographs, and Rajan Babu explains that one photograph is of my wife, one photograph is of my son, and another photograph is of me when I was a small child. So he explains that, and then Feluda leaves from there. And the next day, they happen to meet Tinkori Babu in a coffee shop. And there, he expresses his opinion that Mr. Ghoshal is not a very good person, or he is a crooked man. He has a criminal background. He says that I don't trust that person because he is actually trying to make profit by selling things from here at a higher rate to the foreigners. So I don't like him. Then Mr. Ghoshal might have a motive in sending the letter to Rajan Babu, said Feluda. I learnt during my visit to the curio shop today that the shop is going to get some fresh supplies this evening. I see, exclaimed Tinkori Babu. A letter like that would naturally frighten Rajan Babu into staying at home for a few days, and Ghoshal would get to buy all the new pieces. Exactly. So we've already seen that Tinkori Babu expresses his displeasure about Mr. Ghoshal. And at the same time, Feluda also investigates in his own way, and he finds that there are new supplies that are coming in an old antique shop. So he thinks that maybe Mr. Ghoshal wants that Rajan Babu should not come and buy any of these supplies. So maybe to scare him, he is writing such a letter and giving it to him, because if he is threatening, definitely Rajan Babu will not come out of his house and buy anything. So they think that maybe just to blackmail him and threaten him, just to make him feel frightened, Mr. Ghoshal is writing this letter. So here they had their first doubt, and the doubt was on Mr. Ghoshal. Now let's move forward and see whether that is the culprit or there is someone else. Tinkori Babu also told us about Rajan Babu's son Prabir. Apparently, Rajan Babu had asked Prabir to leave the house 16 years ago when he had caught Prabir stealing money from his cupboard. Prabir had not been seen since. Hence, Tinkori Babu was shocked to hear that we had seen Prabir at the mall that morning. So, Prabir also has a motive to threaten his father, said Feluda. Rajan Babu doesn't know that his son is in town, said Tinkori Babu, and I don't think he should be told. Now we see that Tinkori Babu tells them another incident about Rajan Babu's son Prabir. And what was the incident? He was sent away from the home for stealing. But Feluda tells him that they had just seen Prabir outside the mall. And Tinkori Babu becomes very shocked to hear that, because he says that Rajan Babu doesn't know about that. And maybe he should not know also. So now they have a doubt that maybe he also is taking a revenge from his own father. After further investigation, Feluda told me, I visited Dr. Mitra today. He could have also sent the letter. He seems to be in need of money, as he doesn't have a good practice. A letter like this could make Rajan Babu fall ill, which would require him to go to Dr. Mitra. So there are such a lot of doubts, and amidst all the doubts they have one more doubt. So Feluda tells Topsy about it. He says that, I think it could also be Dr. Mitra. Why does he think that it could be Dr. Mitra? There is only one reason for that, because even though he is a doctor, he was not able to have many patients. So that is what is meant by practice. So he did not have many patients. So maybe to get money, he would have done this. He would have sent a letter like this to Rajan Babu, because if he reads such a letter, definitely he will fall ill. And if he falls ill, that means that Dr. Mitra would be called. And if he is called, he will definitely get money. Now their case reached in such a place where they had doubt on 3 people, but they did not know who the real culprit was. Now to know that, we'll have to do the second part of the lesson, and that will be done in the next class. Until then, read the lesson well and try to learn all the difficult words. Try to learn the names of the different characters. Let's solve the mystery in the next class. Until then, bye.